Let's jump straight into what we have for you. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us on FCT Brief. Our security challenges persist across the country, ranging from terrorism and banditry to kidnapping and communal clashes. There's a growing consensus that force alone may not be enough. Today, we'll be examining the critical role of intelligence gathering in strengthening Nigeria's security framework. From the creeks of the Niger Delta to the forests of Zamfara and the highways of the North Central, the common thread in Nigeria's security woes is the absence or delay of credible intelligence. Experts argue that many attacks could have been prevented if actionable information had reached the right hands on time.
Intelligence is the backbone of any serious security operation. When agencies work with real-time data and local information, they can anticipate and neutralize threats before they escalate. But challenges remain, from poor coordination between agencies to outdated technology and, in some cases, lack of trust from the public. Now, to strengthen Nigeria's internal security and intelligence gathering, what steps should government and citizens take? To help us answer this question and more is Professor Chris Kwaja. He is the Special Envoy on Peace and Security to the Plateau State Governor. Thank you, Prof, for being with us this morning.
Good morning, Prof.
Thank you. Good morning, Nigerians.
All right. Let's take a look at intelligence gathering in our fight to make Nigeria a more secure space. How important and how valuable is intelligence gathering in this warfare?
Intelligence is the oxygen that drives action. When you talk about early warning and early response, intelligence is the glue that binds these two pillars together. In a situation where you have deficits in terms of the organizational structure or the kind of people that are driving intelligence processes, from the collation of data to the processing of these data to transmission for action to happen, if you have a challenge with each of these points, then you will be battling with a huge security dilemma. Unfortunately, we are confronted today with a very serious and complex security issue. The first is not just about the people, but it's about the contested sovereignty of the Nigerian state. That today we are in an era where the Nigerian state is contesting, is negotiating its own sovereignty with non-state armed groups, criminal groups for that matter. That is unfortunate, and this is something that the Nigerian state must take very serious, because one of the most important features of a state is the sovereignty that that state enjoys. The second is also about the recklessness that is defining the way criminal groups are operating in this country. They operate with impunity as if there is no government, as if we don't even have any iota of security infrastructure in the country. And I think for me, that on its own represents a massive blow on our intelligence and security institutions. And my conclusion is that, looking at what happened in Benue and the visit of the president and how that ended, is that the moment you have a system where sanctions are not carried out, no one is called to account for command, because command responsibility is very key to dealing with inefficiency or culpability within the military setting. We've not seen any of that happen. People are saddled with the responsibility of managing security institutions. There are breaches. Some of these breaches are breaches that should not even happen. They are allowed to go scot-free, Rather, what you see in the country is such individuals are transferred from one command position to the other. The crisis we are dealing with right now is one that borders on a deeper reflection on the kind of politics we play with security. The politicization of security is one thing that is costing us very hugely. Unfortunately, Nigerians are dying. Now, when you look at the entire cabinet of Mr. President, the entire cabinet, there is no one single human being with a background in security or policing. No one. Look at the entire Ministry of Defense. The two ministers, none have a history of managing security. What I expect Mr. President to do is to look at the Obasanjo model on managing national security. When Obasanjo came in, who was his chief of staff? A retired general with vast experience in managing people, General Mukhtar. Look at his Minister of Defense, General T.Y. Danjuma, a man with a proven record of fighting to keep this country one, from the Civil War down to the coup that ousted General Gowon and how Obasanjo came in. Now, when OD happened, when Zaki BM happened, yes, we had concerns about how it happened, but he did it in a way that ensured that people knew that there was a government. We need to feel the presence of government. The moment people don't feel the presence of government, they begin to resort to extra-governmental means in responding to their own issues. And that's why many of these bandits and other criminal groups have seen these gaps in terms of the huge disconnect between government and the people. And they are able to buy loyalty from the people. Government must be able to reverse that climate of loyalty where communities now fear bandits, not because bandits are better than government, but because they don't even have access to the government.
All right,
when you look at
let me come in here, Professor, please. Yes, let me come in here. We have information that, you know, in Benue and also in Plateau, the communities actually shared intelligence with the security agencies before those attacks happened. Now, nothing was being done about that. Nobody is being punished for that. Could that be why, you know, this issue keeps degenerating to this point?
I was fortunate to be a member of the Plateau State Security Council for 4 years. And I can tell you firsthand that sometimes, even when communities give this intelligence, security agencies doubt this intelligence. It has happened. We had to push to say, no matter how tiny, no matter how useless an information is, it is better you act on it than for you to say, no, based on the report we are having from our men, we cannot confirm what ABC communities are saying. Mind you, criminals are not ghosts. They have footprints. If in a state like Benue, we had what happened, we saw what happened with the presence of all the security agencies, then something is fundamentally wrong. It means we also have what I will call enemies of intelligence within the Nigerian state, that the Nigerian state must do well to confront. And these enemies of intelligence I'm talking about might not necessarily be about individuals that are selling intelligence, but more about organizational dysfunctionality or inefficiency. And that on its own is a major signpost to failure, is a major signpost to the weakness associated with interagency collaboration in the management of intelligence in this country. And we really need to have a serious conversation around Nigeria's national security architecture. It's unheard of across the world. to have, for instance, the Office of the National Security Advisor performing operational roles. That's not the job of an NSA. The job of an NSA is purely advisory. But look at, for instance, the Office of the NSA in Abuja. It's far bigger than even, it's competing with the National Assembly. It doesn't happen anywhere. Even in the United States, the Office of the NSA is right in the villa, in the White House. Very small. Your job is to advise, allow defense headquarters, allow IG of police to do their job, and all you do is to coordinate with a view to providing Mr. President with expert advice on how these security and military institutions should perform.
Okay.
That is where we got it wrong.
So, Professor Kwaja, if you could just continue with your thoughts.
Yeah, thank you. I drew attention to the operational inefficiency, the institutional crisis that we have when it comes to the structure and the functions of the Office of the National Security Advisor. Now, because we are running an NSA's office in that manner, it has to a large extent weakened the role of the Ministry of Defense, which in turn has weakened the office of the Chief of Defense Staff. Because why do you need an Office of Counterterrorism in the Office of the National Security Advisor? The Minister of Defense, because counterterrorism is purely a defense and intelligence issue. More, the Minister of Defense, as an institution, grounded and populated with people with vast experience to drive this process, should be the hub of that kind of arrangement. The NSS office should have provided advisory on how a counter-terrorism infrastructure should be managed by the Nigerian state. And that is it. It stops there. But not to have all these structures and edifices for implementation. It does not augur well for the peace and security of this country. And because we are doing that, we are misapplying resources under the guise of managing security and defense in Nigeria. That is one. The second point is that when President Tinubu visited Benue, and he spoke in Benue, did the people who gathered in Benue see him as President Tinubu, or as a Muslim, or as a pro-Christian, or as a Yoruba, or as APC leader, or as someone that is weakening PDP? Which means President Tinubu went to Benue with baggages of identities, and each of these identities was at play. And that was why some people criticized the visit, that it was more of a political rally than a visit to condole people that were victims of violence. We need a leadership in this country that has one face, that when a president speaks, he is seen as the president and commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Nigeria. And it's not too late to do that. Mr. President needs to also take time to reflect that when I was given the mandate to govern this country, was I given the mandate to govern APC, PDP, Labour Party, Yorubas, Muslims, Christians, or Nigerians? We need that face of a president that is Nigerian. And we missed that. We missed that for quite some time, not just under Tinubu, but before Tinubu. We saw how our leaders were managing this country as if they were representative of their regions. And I think the way President Tinubu spoke in Benue has rekindled that confidence in Nigerians, that he understands what the issues are and that he is willing to work with the leadership to deal with the problem. I think I give him kudos for that outing. All he needs to do is to take time to review what we have and take bold steps in getting people who are not adding value to the system out, and reach out to people that he thinks can
Prof, let
help
me
him
come in here,
regardless of
please.
party.
Yeah, Prof. I like your submission or what you said about the Office of the National Security Advisor, the Ministry of Defense, the Defense Headquarters, and all that. Now, we have different institutions that deals directly with intelligence in Nigeria. Now, why is it difficult? Like I listened to one of the defense chiefs talked about that what happened in Benue was because a lot of people that were out to sabotage the military took some actions. And also, some of the persons we spoke with also said, look, that they got this information and that these attackers were coming in. Now, my question is, why do we even have this lack of coordination amongst the various intelligence institutions we have in Nigeria? And when we have such institutions, such intelligence information, how do we coordinate to the point of implementing? Because you talked about sanctioning people. If people were saddled with the responsibility of intelligence and there is intelligence failure, shouldn't there be appropriate sanctions that is applied?
You are back to the point I made about sanctions, and that in the absence of sanctions, dysfunctionality defines the modus operandi of our institutions, and that's what we see. The NIA is in charge of intelligence around external threats. The DIA is in charge of defense-related intelligence. The DSS is in charge of intelligence within the country. And there is a strong connection between the external and the internal when it comes to the role of intelligence agencies, and that's why we have the Joint Intelligence Board. That board is an incubator that is able to process intelligence with a view to looking at which institution of government need to act. Is it the police? Is it the army? Is it the Air Force? Is it the Navy? And the DHQ is saddled the responsibility of coordinating action agencies when it comes to how to deploy, where to deploy, and the relationship between the intelligence and the armed forces. Now, there is a problem with the structure we have, and that is that we see more of competition than cooperation between and amongst the defense and intelligence infrastructure of this country. Where you have this kind of situation, it is difficult for you to gauge success. I recall under Buhari, for instance, where each of the heads of the respective services was going to brief him, and the Chief of Defense Staff Office was almost non-existent. But we have someone there who was more ceremonial. But if you have a more coordinated structure, the Chief of Defense Staff will be the face of any discussion and planning around what the armed forces will do. Now, that is something that we need to really reflect on with a view to rejigging our security and military infrastructure with a view to optimizing or getting value for the resources that the federal government is putting in. We have some of the best human beings that are manning our security and defense infrastructure in this country, but they themselves are victims of the institutional dysfunctionality.
All right, Prof.
And I will give you an example.
If I may come in here before
when you
have to... if I may come in here, because we're totally running out of time. You spoke about improving Nigeria's security architecture, talking more about it. Now, the National Assembly is planning to have a national summit to address insecurity. Some people are for it, some are against it. But that national summit, I believe, is going to hold. Now, do you think this should be the direction of such discussions with all the points you've raised? Do you think that this should be the focus at such summit?
It's a total waste of resources.
Okay.
For the National Assembly to talk of a national summit on security means it has agreed that it has failed when it comes to its own responsibility of providing oversight on security. Why should we be talking about the National Conference on Security when we have several committees on security in the National Assembly. How many of them have engaged Nigerians, engaged the security agencies, come up with resolutions that are concrete, resolutions that should provide a pathway for solving this problem? Under Buhari, we had a national security summit. I participated in that summit. Nothing happened. It was a jamboree. Monies were just spent. It's an avenue to spend our money. That conference will not solve any problem, because there is nothing about the security of this country we don't know when it comes to the causalities, when it comes to issues around how to mobilize and deploy our military to go and do the work, engagement between the political class and the professional institutions, government-citizens relations, the role of the National Assembly in providing oversight on security and intelligence agencies. We know all that. We don't need a conference to do that. If you want to kill an initiative in this country, set up committees or organize such conferences. It's always an escapist way of showing Nigerians that they are doing something. What conference do we need, apart from the discussion that Channels had with Honorable Yusuf Gagdi, for instance? The explanation he gave about the security of this country, why decentralization of policing is important, why we need to rejig the armed forces. What do we need? The discussion, the position of my governor, for instance, on the need to overhaul the security architecture of this country, the position of the governor of Zamfara State on the need to decentralize policing, and the position of the Northern Governors Forum on this issue. What else do we need? We don't need a national conference on that. It's just a waste of resources. All they need to do is to look at what should be the building blocks for these ideas that are coming up. Some of us gave these ideas to the National Assembly. At a point in time under Buhari, his first tenure, I was invited by the House of Representatives Committee on Army to come and explain the role of mercenaries. I spent 6 years in the UN monitoring mercenaries across the world. I wrote to the Nigerian government then to say I need to see the Minister of Foreign Affairs to explain my role as a member of the UN Working Group on Mercenaries. I didn't get any response. That's what we are talking about. I reached out to our representative in the African Union to say we need an African Union position on the role that mercenaries are playing in fueling conflict in Africa. I did not get a response. What are we talking about? People are collecting salaries, they are not doing the work, and we are dragging people for a conference.
All right, Prof.
It shows we have failed.
All right, Prof. Let's quickly look at this other aspect. The president, while in, the president also talked about that state police is no longer negotiable. And I think it threw the challenge to the National Assembly to come up with the appropriate stuff. Now, but if you ask Nigerians, they have different perspective about the structure of the state police, what it should be like. In your own thoughts, how do you think would be the best way to have a state police that will be effective? Not just setting up a state police that will end up being like this present police structure that we have.
I was saddled with the responsibility in 2014 to provide secretariat services to the Plateau State delegates to the National Conference in 2014. And we had a position on not state police in the context of state police that is controversial, but that decentralization of policing should be the focus. We need an umbrella conversation that we have a problem. And the problem is that there are deficits with our policing. We all agree to that as Nigerians. 2, there is a need to decentralize policing. We are all in agreement on that as Nigerians. Now, in terms of the nitty-gritty, that is where we need to bring in experts to look at what should be the building blocks for this edifice called decentralization of policing or state police. I have been engaging with some of the northern governors with a view to looking at how well we can provide leadership in that context when it comes to how we develop a model that can be a draft. You know, the way they work in the UN. If you have an idea, you provide a draft of what you have. People begin to work on the draft until you develop something that is acceptable. So there are documents like that. We should go back to the report of the 2014 National Conference. It made specific recommendations on what should be our thought processes around the decentralization of policing with a view to optimizing our own police as an institution, or as an institution with personnel with mandate to provide safety and security for Nigerians. It's there. And I think it's not rocket science. It's something that we can do. I know we have very short time here, but I am happy to come back to you on
if you could just finish your thoughts in 10 seconds.
What
run out of
can
time.
look like, or should look like.
All right.
All right. Thank you so much, Prof, for your time with us on the program. It's always a delight speaking with you. Thank you so much, Professor Kwaja.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prof.
Thank you.